So I'm really excited to be invited here today to talk to you guys about this stuff and to be invited to come back this summer. I'm super stoked about it. But I want to start with a question, which is, what is your number one responsibility as staff to help campers with grief and loss? What are your ideas? Nothing. I guess that's cool. What do you got?
Be someone for them to listen to.
Okay. Somebody over here raise their hand. Yeah. What else?
Know they're not alone.
Thank you. Yes.
Taking care of yourself.
Yes, that's so important. Those of you who saw me at camp last summer remember that I harp on self-care. You can't help others unless you're helping yourself, right? You run out of gas. Did you raise your hand in the back? What do you got? Ask them what they need. That's, you guys are awesome. Okay, who knows the mission of Camp Kesem? Hopefully, like
all of you.
In this room. Who knows it? Oh man.
Yeah.
Not word for word, just like.
Yeah. Support system, like outside of their home life and something else that they can come to.
To support children through and beyond a parent's cancer, right? And that is your number one responsibility as staff when it comes to the grief and loss piece, especially at camp this summer. Support. That's it. It's pretty simple. What you want to do is create an emotionally safe space. What does that mean to you guys, emotionally safe? Somebody said listening. What else?
Non-judgmental.
Non-judgmental. Thank you. That's like the best thing you can do. What else? What means emotionally safe to you guys? Yeah?
Confidential.
Confidential sometimes, right? If it's something that a camper is saying they're going to hurt themselves or somebody else, you grab the MHP. If they're saying somebody hurt them, whether that's at camp, at home, whatever, you're going to grab the MHP, right? If it's anything that you feel like you can't handle in any way, grab the MHP. We're always there. Creating an emotionally safe space is going to be your number one job in supporting campers. First and foremost, they need to feel safe. They need to feel comfortable. They want to feel heard. And I brought you guys a snack today, but it's to do an exercise with. So what I'd like to ask you to do is take one and pass it on so that everybody gets one Oreo, and then just set it on the table in front of you. You're not going to eat it yet. This also reminds me, thank you for being here tonight when I know you could be watching Game of Thrones right now. You guys are great.
I don't want to.
Just take one, set it on the table in front of you, and keep passing. While we're passing Oreos, I want to ask you guys a question. What do you know about Oreos?
They're good.
They're good. They're delicious, right? What else do we know about Oreos? They're chocolate. What else? They are cream filled. What else do we know about Oreos? Okay.
Do you allow me to tummy ache?
Yes, that is true. I actually had to buy these and put them directly in my car. I wasn't allowed to take them to my house because of that. What else do we know about Oreos? Okay. All right. I know we're passing kind of slow. Other things we know about Oreos. Oreos were actually not the first cookie that looked like that. Hydrox came first. So we also know that Oreo is a copycat. We know that Oreo was more popular because who has seen Hydrox on the shelves lately? Pretty much nobody, right? We know that Oreos are consumed by kids, adults, old people. What else do we know?
There's different kinds.
There are different kinds. Oh my God, there are so many kinds. I just brought you the regular kind because those are my favorite, and I have to eat the leftovers. So, So, the next question that I want to ask you guys, whenever everybody's got an Oreo, or we're pretty close to everybody having an Oreo, yeah? Is, look at your Oreo and think about every time you've eaten an Oreo, what is your way of eating an Oreo? Dip it in milk. Who else? What do you got? Take it apart. Who does something different? What else do you guys do to eat an Oreo? You eat the cream first? Thank you. Yes. Bite it like a heathen. What do you do? Oh my God. That's genius.
Living in 3,000.
That's amazing. What else do we do to eat Oreos? Who can describe for me, from start to finish, their process for eating an Oreo? What do you got?
So I like get all of the Oreos that I want, like 7 or something, and then I get a knife and I undo all of them, like take them apart and then scrape off the inside of all of them, and then I eat all the cookies with milk, and then I eat the inside.
All right. We talked about non-judgment earlier, so I'm going to work on that. Who does something different than Mildred? Everyone. Okay. Somebody else, describe to me your process from beginning to end. Yours is okay. What?
I fried it, I segmented it in half,
Okay.
And then I just put the rest
Okay. 2 bites, done. That's very simple. You get a good cookie to cream ratio. Who has a different process? Let me talk to a dipper. Who's a dipper? You dip just the cookie, right? Who dips the whole thing?
Who does it with the forks?
Okay. All right, so tell me about the fork dipping thing from top to bottom.
You know, I grab a glass of milk, stir it around, and then I put like a fork inside the cream and where I like it's dipped in it. So like the whole thing's in there, I wait like 2 seconds to eat it.
You know that I'm going to go home later and try this out. Everyone's going to think I'm totally insane.
Honestly, it's changed.
Okay. I'm doing it. There are so many different ways, right? Every person in here has a different Oreo experience, but really it's a cookie. There's like, you just eat it, right? Or maybe you crush it up and turn it into something else and then you eat it. But it's supposed to be one thing. You can eat them now, by the way. You can eat them. I just wanted to have them in front of you so you could like see what we're talking about. Think about your process. It's just one thing, an Oreo cookie, right?
Hey guys.
Every person in here does something different. Everybody knows something different about Oreos. If I had asked every single person to tell me one Oreo fact or one thing that they know and made everybody come up with something different, every person in this room would have said something different, right? We all eat them in different ways, etc. The idea here is that grief and loss is much the same. Every person experiences it differently. Every person knows something different. Every person kind of understands something different. And everybody does it differently. There's no wrong way. I was joking when I called you a heathen. I knew you could take it. That's not heathen-like. Sometimes I eat my cookies like that too if I don't have milk, right? There's no right way to eat an Oreo. There is no right way to grieve. There is no right reason to grieve. And I think that's really important too. Sometimes I talk to kids and they're more upset about their pet dying than their parent having cancer. You know what? That makes sense to me. There's no right reason. There's no right way. Every single person is going to know something different. Everybody's going to understand and experience something different. Think about a breakup. It's going to mean something different to you now when you're in this stage of life than it would to a high schooler. And when you look back at like your 13-year-old breakups, you're probably like, oh my God, that's so lame. Sometimes I sit in front of high schoolers and I'm like, really? But for them, that's the worst thing they've experienced. That's very, very meaningful and difficult for them. And they're going through it in their own way, right? This is something that's much more significant, dealing with especially the loss of a parent or guardian, but sometimes children are grieving or families are grieving, even just from the idea of cancer. I'll give you an example. My boss is actually on the Camp Custom Advisory Board. She is dealing with metastatic breast cancer right now, and her family is in total grief mode, and so is our whole office, because nobody expected that cancer to come back. She had just hit her 5-year remission, right? That's grief, even though she's still standing right in front of us. So how do we hope campers can cope with grief and loss really well? We want to help them with that, right? We want to help them cope. But really, it's more important to remember what you really can't do. We have our limitations, right? You can't provide therapy of any kind for campers, right? You can't really counsel them in any way. The best thing you can probably do is talk to them, listen. If it goes beyond the need for some understanding and listening, call the MHP. But I'll tell you right now, even the MHPs at camp cannot counsel campers. We are not allowed to provide any kind of therapeutic services for campers in any way. And that's because providing therapy at camp is beyond KESM's scope. So the things that you guys were saying earlier about how best to support, those are the answers right there. Supporting the campers, creating an emotionally safe space. If they're seeking help beyond that, calling the MHP, and if we need to do something, we'll call the camp advisor. Especially, again, if they say they want to hurt themselves, somebody else, if they're considering that, you guys hopefully by now all know the drill. You call us, we make some phone calls. So let's talk about what we should do, because you know what you can't do, right? Let's talk about what we should do. There are going to be 3 tasks. The first one is thinking. This markers, inks. Sweet. Is that one better? I should have brought my markers. Bomb markers. Okay. This one's better. The second task is emotional. And the last task that they want me to talk about is actually growing. So I want to talk about what these are for a second, and then I'm going to split you up a little bit so you can talk about it a little bit more. So when we think about thinking, kids just want to understand what's happened sometimes. We as adults don't know a lot about cancer. Sometimes we know more than we wish we did. You guys probably know more than the average college student, right? Kids don't understand much of anything, especially when it comes to grief and loss in this area. And something that I see time and time again is that parents often freeze when it comes time to explain what's going on or to talk to their kids because they're dealing with their own stuff and they don't know how to talk to their kid about it. And so they say nothing. Unfortunately, that's a really common problem. They just don't say anything, they freeze. Kids want to understand what's happened, they want to understand what they're experiencing. The second task, emotional, they want to be able to express how they feel. So first they've got to understand it, then they've got to be able to express it. And then the third task is growing. They want to just grow from the experience to be normal. How many of you guys have seen KESM kids that just want to be normal? All right, me too. So here's my thinking. I know this training is supposed to be about an hour. I would like to get you guys out of here as quickly as possible. Again, you know, the Game of Thrones thing. What I would like to do is split you guys up a little bit, and each group is going to have one of these tasks and kind of report back on that task, okay? So let's split the room. We're gonna do, I don't know, this is gonna be the weirdest split ever. You guys, and then you guys will be one group in this aisle here, and you guys will be the last group. And let's just get into different parts of the classroom, and I'll talk to you about, this group will be thinking, this group will be emotional, and this group will be growth. So divide up. What we're going to do is talk about the different things that affect these, okay? So let's split up and kind of get closer together so you can talk a little bit. And hopefully at least one person in each group has like a pen or...
love it. I appreciate it.
Okay. Actually, I'm gonna do this slightly differently. I think what I'm gonna do instead is have each group work on each task, and then we're gonna report back all at the same time. So here's what you're gonna do for thinking. We're gonna take maybe like 5 minutes for each one. We'll do thinking first, and then we'll move on to emotional, and then we'll move on to growth, and we'll do all those at the same time, so that each group has a chance to discuss it in a small group, but then everybody gets to benefit from what everybody has to say. Because it struck me as I was kind of dividing you guys up that you guys have a different range of experience with ages of campers and things like that, and I would love for everybody in the room to be able to benefit from everybody else's experience with that. So, here is your group task for thinking. Every camper is going to be in kind of a different place when it comes to understanding. The task here is they want to understand what happened. So it's our job to help listen to them, provide support, acknowledge what they do understand about their home situation from their parent or guardian, bless you. Here's the first question that I have for each group. What are the things that are going to affect what a camper understands about their parent or caregiver situation? Just take like 2 minutes and kind of talk about it a little bit, and then I'll have you guys answer back.
You guys can do this one. We can all talk.
Roughly equal size groups, sort of.
Let me change.
I think it's important also.
Awesome.
Like it's okay to connect it.
Is there a way to select them the ball?
It's really there for them.
What do you got?
Their problems that it's okay to connect yourself to something real. Like I think that for people adult campers, they should much about their own life. It's like you want to be able to like relate to them, but you don't want to like it's like you're not listening to transactions, like you're here to help.
So
Yes.
I always try to do it as fast as we can. I mean, sometimes you can't, but.
Right. Okay, mostly silence. That means we're ready to answer the question, right? Which group wants to go first and kind of share what you talked about? What are the things that are going to influence what a camper understands? Who wants to go ahead?
One of the things we talked about is kind of like how you were saying before, so certain parents might just not go into much detail at all and just say like, oh, I'm sick or whatever it might be, where other ones will provide their children with like more kind of accurate as to what they're doing, maybe like stage, all that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, so parents' willingness to share what's really going on. What else did your group come up with?
What age is the factor as to what the kind of kids like they can understand in regards to cancer. Someone who's a much younger unit is not going to understand cancer the same way someone who's in like an older unit or even CITs.
Absolutely. Did everybody hear that? Age is a huge factor. Your CITs are going to understand a whole lot. The littlest ones, maybe not so much, right? What did your group talk about? What did you guys come up with? What's going to affect how much a kid understands?
Well, we said kind of the same thing. Also, like the relationship between the child and parent. Like,
Yes.
if the parents are divorced or how much the child sees the parent.
Okay, so you hit a couple of things there, not just the relationship between the kid and the parent, the relationship between the family dynamic, right? How much time they spend with that parent. I've definitely worked with kids who have lost a parent who weren't as affected or who didn't care to understand more because it was a parent who was out of the picture, right? Siblings would kind of go in with that family dynamic. Yeah, you guys hit on a lot of stuff. Okay, your group back there, did you guys come up with anything that the other two groups haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, we kind of talked about, like, we touched on a lot of things, but, like, there's so many other external factors that play into this child's life that may have not have an idea, that may have control over, like, every interaction they have in their life, the things they watch on TV, like, whether their siblings are older or younger, everything that they other campers they talk to, other experiences.
Yes, thank you. These campers are not living in a vacuum. Everything kind of has an influence on what they do and how they act, but especially on what they understand. So some of the things that you're talking about might be school, might be social support. Do they know other kids who have been through similar experiences who they can talk to and express some of their confusion? Sometimes kids get wrong messages or they understand something totally incorrect because of that, because they're talking to other kids, right? You know, older or younger siblings, sometimes even when a parent isn't willing to share or doesn't know how to share, an older sibling will kind of sit down and talk and say, listen, the hospital is really scary, or, you know, everything can have an effect, but you guys really put together a pretty good list, the different things that influence how a kid understands what's going on. So with that being said, the next thing that I want your groups to kind of talk about is how we give them space to talk about that. I know you guys said non-judgmental, listening, those are such important things. It's not necessarily our job to teach campers what they don't understand about cancer or about the other things that are going on, right? We're not going to talk with them about prognosis or stages or necessarily even correct their ideas or what they believe. What we can do is the support that we were talking about earlier. So I want you guys to get together and talk about the best ways to do that, best techniques for listening, maybe the best ways to like acknowledge their experience, whatever your group kind of comes up with. And another important question might be, what can you do if a camper is just factually incorrect? How would you address that in a like a caring, supportive way? So get back together, I'll give you another couple of minutes and we'll talk about it again.
Or you just like in the mainstream crowd possible trying to just like, what about this? You know, like don't try to, you know, don't do it in a way that they get passionate for being able to, you know, they're wrong, but it doesn't mean that they're going to do that.
Big also, you know, demonstrating that you care about their
Just like listening to them, like you should be open and say, I should do want to share anything, like if they might say, don't force them to share anything, we should have been comfortable with you.
Like bombshells on everyone, so that way it's the last day.
kind of along with that, like, I remember I had a camper, he's one of your campers in the box, he was like, yeah, he's awesome. But like, his whole first year, he was really shy, he was really cool, but he was really shy. But he gained a lot of confidence after the first year of camp. He didn't share anything in the second year of camp, he was just like, hey, talk about this, talk about this. Because he finally felt comfortable. And I think that's what you want to cultivate. It's like, you don't want to force anyone to do it, but you want to cultivate that, like, hey, we're here to listen to you, you know, and I think he was really excited, he was really happy that he finally felt safe to tell those stories.
So let's take like 30 more seconds to wrap it up. I told you I'm going to try to be here pretty quickly. I know you guys shared first last time, so I'm going to ask you guys to kind of share what you talked about during that time.
So we just talked about like kind of physical things about reminding them that we're like open to talk. So like nodding when you're talking to them and showing that you're listening and getting down on their level. And just reminding them, even though camp is like a place for fun and having games, that it's okay to talk about what's going on at home. That's why they're there. So just reminding them that it's a place where you can talk. And we had a little bit of a difficulty with your question about the factually incorrect, but we said like kind of just to approach it gently because you don't know how they're going to react to it, and asking them like where they get the information from, because it could be different if it's just a rumor like that they heard or if it was from their parents.
Yeah, that's a great point. How about you guys in the back? What did you guys talk about?
Well, we talked a little bit about upfront, because some campers like a little bit of probing, like maybe just like remember about okay, talk about things like making sure that they feel opportunity, but know the reality of like not ask questions that you don't need to know, and then you just have to respond to them, share if they want to. Actually, yeah, I just want to know how it might not necessarily be our place exactly to like say, oh, you're wrong, that's not true, but just making sure that the word having other children and making sure that like you're not going against the parents, because the parents are the public something that's how they want their children. That's what they want them to believe.
I'm so glad you guys are so in tune with that, because it's such a touchy thing, isn't it? How many of you guys have had experience with a camper who just said something like totally wrong? There's some nodding, there's some raised hands. I'll ask you for a story in a second if anybody is willing to share. What did your guys' group talk about? I heard some of it.
We kind of talked in like if they're wrong, like if you can't really encourage, but sometimes we just didn't like emphasize the importance of compassion. Like you never want to talk down to somebody. Like you're there because you're here to support them. It's like, you know, if they're kids, they're never going to say something that's going to be wrong eventually. It's just, you know, dealing with them in a mature manner. Be like, hey, it's like, have you thought about this? Or like, you know, like just it's like disproving them in the most respectful way possible. Don't like, you know, talk to them. No, you're wrong. This is why. Like, you know, being compassionate is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, everybody here is so in tune with that, and I love that because it means that you're all going to go do a really good job naturally. No training needed. But I think, you know, the idea about the factual mistakes and things and, you know, what parents have said is kind of important. Is anybody willing to share a story about a camper who said something just kind of wrong and how you handled that? You can leave out the how you handled it part if you're uncomfortable with sharing. No judgment here. So you had a camper that just said something that was not right, right?
Yeah, well, they kept on going around, like, they had their phone on them, and they kept going around showing, like, they had, their background was a Confederate flag. And so, like, it was just kind of, like, touchy, because, like, you don't want to just, like, you're racist because you have a Confederate flag on your background, but, like, it's not okay to be going around, like, showing that to all sorts of different campers. So it's just kind of a weird and kind of, like, it's just, like, instead of, like, I guess confronting it head on, we just said, like, your phone needs to be away. Like, you can't be showing your phone to anybody. Like, that's private stuff. Yeah, put it away.
That seems like a great way to handle it. Anybody else have a good example of like a camper saying something wrong or like being factually incorrect? What do you got?
Yeah, my first year, like my first day in the camper had said that women shouldn't be pregnant. So like, I was like, that's not very nice, that's not nice to say, and then like, this is the kind of message, but like, it's just talking about politics again, so I was like, okay, we're not gonna talk about it, like, we gotta talk about politics, like, yeah, like, that's just not it.
I've heard about squashing it, but I feel like there's way more than one kind of behavior that you guys are trying to squash sometimes at camp, right? I love it. It sounds like you guys handled those situations really, really well. And these aren't just situations involving cancer or grief or loss. It's kind of everything, right? And so what you guys are saying about how to handle those discussions goes with everything at camp. From day one, showing campers that you're willing to listen, encouraging them to open up, not just about their grief and their losses, but about everything, is a really powerful way to create that safe emotional space that we talked about at the beginning, so that when it does come time for empowerment or cabin chat, those campers are willing to share because you've made it safe for them to do that. Campers who feel like the adults aren't listening to them, or the adults aren't correcting it when other campers are not listening or acting really rudely or, I don't know, being super racist with the Confederate flag, those campers aren't going to be as willing to share, and they're not going to have the magical experience necessarily that you guys are trying to create for them, right? So I love all your techniques for listening to campers, especially you said like getting down on their level. That's one of the most important things you can do, especially for the little ones. If you can look them in the eye from their level, it shows that you're willing to meet them where they're at, and that's one of the most powerful things you can do to let them know you're there with them. You're not there in front of them. You're not there for all the other campers and them. You are like connected, right? Just because you're on their level, making eye contact. That really good listening ear is super important. And you know, Mildred said something about like asking questions sometimes. One of the best things that you can do is make sure you understand. So even just saying, let me make sure I get this. Are you saying blah, 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 blah? Okay, all right, just checking, right? Or if you aren't really following what they're saying, can you help me understand that a little bit better? Is just a great way to show that they do have control in the conversation and they can let you know. Sometimes it's really frustrating for kids because they don't have the same language skills that we do. You're not going to have that problem as much with the CITs, but with the little ones, they might not be able to share exactly what they're trying to. And so you making sure that you can clarify sometimes can be a really good skill. You guys had great ideas about acknowledging the experience. I want to point out the difference, because it's really important, between sympathy and empathy. You don't feel bad for campers. You don't pity campers. You empathize with them. You want to meet them where they're at and understand how they're feeling. So it's less, being sympathetic and more trying to put yourself in their shoes and really understand how they feel and what they're experiencing. I used that example of a breakup earlier because it's one that most people have been through at some point. And I said, even I will look at, a 13-year-old who's going through, oh my God, this is the worst breakup and it's so dramatic. I have to remember that when I was 13, it is kind of dramatic. Middle school is rough, man. And so just because I have a lot more life experience and I know what's coming for them down the road doesn't make their experience any less real. So that empathy is really the skill of putting yourself in their shoes and trying to understand what they're going through. So the next sort of task is the emotional one, right? And campers usually use 3 ways to work through emotions. Words, especially older campers, are going to be great with that, right? Play, that is actually the natural language of children. When they don't have words, they use play to show how they're feeling. And behavior. So when it comes to words, some kids are really expressive and some kids are not. Like, I definitely met some super expressive campers last year who let you know what they're about, right? And I had definitely met a few campers who said nothing, even though I bonded with them all week. It was very quiet bonding. You're gonna have campers that talk your ear off, and that's great. And you're gonna have campers who never ever mention once cancer or grief or their experience. And that's okay too. They might just not be in that place. Every reaction to grief is a normal reaction. I can't stress that enough. Everyone in this room handled Oreos a different way. Everyone will or has handled grief in a different way. And it's all normal. I've met people who have genuinely processed and worked through their grief in a matter of weeks, and I've met people who are 80 and there are things that happen to them when they're children that they still have not processed and grieved for properly. And so some of these kids really will have worked through a lot of their grief. They have a lot of support. They have great families who are really helping them through the process, and they're doing great. And there are some kids who are maybe older and things happened when they were younger that affect them in ways they never understand because it hasn't been properly processed, which is a really hard thing. You guys talked about a lot of different ways to create safe space, right? Empowerment and cabin chat. Any other time that you have to talk with the campers are really great places to do that. And I know that all of you are listening carefully without the judgment, without any kind of criticism, just asking questions when they're needed and just kind of reflecting. Gosh, it sounds like you're really sad right now. It sounds like that was really hard for you. It's really important not to say, I know how you feel, because that is BS. All of you in this room have been through similar things, right? But you don't know how the other people feel necessarily. Everybody walked out of Camp Kesem after being a counselor last summer with a different experience and different thoughts about it and different feelings, even though pretty much everybody did the same thing, right? You process that in different ways, you think about it differently. And so when you say, I know how you feel, to someone else who's been in that situation, even if you have, their gut instinct is to go, no, you don't. How dare you, right? I understand is not always a great phrase to use with kids who are grieving or have experienced loss. Because, again, the natural instinct is, no, you don't. How could you? Even the other campers might not fully understand their experience, but they can get pretty close. And that's the best you can do, is to get as close as you can and be as empathetic as you can to understanding their experience. Those are the things that you can share. Sounds like you're really hurting right now. That must have been really tough, right? It's really amazing that you were willing to share that with me. It helps me understand you a little bit better, even though I know I could never really understand what you're going through. So those are the kinds of things that are really going to help create a more safe emotional space at camp for the campers when it comes to things like cabin chat or the difficult conversations. So I want to talk about something maybe a little more fun, which is play. Because I know this is kind of like a tough topic, right? Play is like work for kids. It's their natural language. It's not frivolous. It's not useless. So what I'd like you to do in your groups is just spend a minute talking about how play at camp is helpful for the children. That's it. How is it helpful?
It's something that doesn't know anything about it. But they express like something I feel.
Okay. So, how does play help the campers while they're at camp? I'm going to start with you guys in the back. How is play helpful to campers? It's not useless. How does it help?
They get to like kind of try to get those emotions out through like play, and then you kind of like use like role play or pretending or something else as like a segue into like how they're feeling without actually having to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that all the time in my office. I've got like a little dollhouse, and they can come and like make the mom doll and the dad doll hate each other, and it's terrible, and that's how they work through it, right? Or I have like a sand tray. We're gonna bring you guys one this summer, and I'm super excited about it. That can help. What did you guys come up with? How else does play help kids at camp? What do they get out of it? What do you got?
It kind of helps them connect to each other too, so that way later when you move into cabins or something like that, they already have that connection with each other where it might make them more willing to like open up later or just to be kids.
Absolutely. Play helps them give up that whole like, I need to be older than I am. I'm going to take care of my mom because my dad is gone now thing. It helps them connect with each other, right? It helps them connect with you because you guys are all out there playing with them and it's awesome and it's so exciting. It's why you guys love camp too. It's fun, right? It helps them connect with each other and build those social skills. It helps them practice communication at a really basic level, right? You have to communicate to play. Look at baseball, how much chat there is going on the field, right? Sometimes, with that being said, it can help with like sportsmanship and things like that too. What did you guys talk about? How else does play help kids?
We said both of those things, but we also said just kind of overall distraction.
Yeah.
And a chance to just kind of communicate those.
Absolutely. And they deserve that. They deserve a chance to be a kid. The thing that I heard repeatedly from your trouble campers last year when I would take them aside and just talk with them is that Kesem was the one place where they weren't singled out. They weren't singled out even for behavior. Even when they were sitting with me, they thought it was like cool because I was their buddy. But they didn't have to be that girl whose mom has cancer, or they didn't have to be, the cancer kid. And so normalization is really important. Play allows them to just be, which is great. Something that I saw last summer that I thought was really cool, you guys helped develop sort of leadership in the kids through play a lot. I saw that in the way that you were working with them. Sometimes you helped them work through disagreements through play, like during games and stuff. Like I can't even remember which counselor it was, but I definitely saw somebody make the kids solve a Gaga ball pit problem. Like we're going to play it out. We're going to do best of 3 or whatever to sort of negotiate like who the winner really was. They can learn responsibility through play. Sometimes you guys make them pretty responsible even when they're cleaning up from games and things like that. And I think all of that is really important. But play really is the natural language of kids. It's how they work through everything. And honestly, how good does it feel for us to let go and play a little bit? It doesn't all have to be so serious all the time, right? Yes, your jobs there are very serious and very important, but you're allowed to have fun doing them. So I want to ask, the next thing is the growing task, right? But the other way that kids express emotions is through behavior. Who had some behavioral issues with campers last summer? Yes. Okay. Some very serious faces here. We had some issues, right? So there's a handout that I'm hoping that they can send to you. But it's got a couple of different ways that, sure, that'd be great. it's got a couple of different ways that kids can show their feelings through behavior. So I just wanted to kind of show you that. There's a couple of different kinds. So inwardly directed behavior. Oh my God, magic. Yo, when I was in college, it was not this cool. We had to like write in chalk. All right, so we have inwardly directed behavior, and I know I saw that from a couple of campers. So I'll give you an example. Venom, like, wouldn't talk to other kids sometimes. Who knows that camper? He wouldn't talk to other kids sometimes, and he would kind of like isolate himself away. It's a pretty good classic example of inwardly directed behavior. But some other things that you might see are sort of like restlessness. Like if you see a camper pacing, that's kind of inwardly directed. He's not putting it on anybody else. It's not outward. Acting younger than they really are sometimes is inwardly directed, especially among older campers like your high schoolers. Crying, fear of going to sleep, or waking up in the middle of the night might be inwardly directed because those are caused by stress. And trust me, in their lives at home, your campers are dealing with a lot of stress. Even if it's just the stress of like learning how to date in middle school or whatever, that's compounded by the grief and loss that they've experienced at some point in their lives. Illness, lack of appetite or overeating, anxiety. If you're seeing classic signs of anxiety or depression, those are inwardly directed behavior. The next kind is outwardly directed behavior. So you guys all saw hyperactive, combative, out there campers. Who can name a good one? Baba! Thank you. I think I quoted him the other day at our advisory board meeting because, you know, Mama Ray's a savage. And that is classic outwardly directed behavior. I'll tell you right now, on you guys as counselors, that can be overwhelming, right? Who had Bubba? I'm sorry. You guys are awesome. You guys were amazing. And he's such an amazing kid, right? But it's a lot. It's a lot to have a camper like that on your plate and have to deal with all these other kids at the same time, right? So please feel free at any time to find an MHP and be like, hi, can you just, thanks. Because we make special friends at camp and we love it. We thrive on that. So please, we love it. Another thing I really want to point out that I can't remember if I mentioned during camp last summer or not, frequent accidents. How many of you saw campers that wet the bed? Yeah. Anybody here surprised by that? Bedwetting is a sign of trauma. Having a parent or caregiver with cancer, even if they did not pass away, is traumatic for children. And so it makes a lot of sense that they might have accidents, right? That can be both inwardly directed behavior caused by the stress from trauma or outwardly directed behavior when you look at some of that. If they're having other kinds of accidents like, rushing and hurting themselves, that would also qualify as outward behavior. But I wanted to make sure I pointed that out because I'm not sure what Care Bear is talking about later, but I'm not sure if she'll get a chance. If you have campers who are bedwetting, that is a normal reaction. And I know that sounds crazy because some of those kids were a little bit older than we expected to wet the bed, right? It's from trauma and it's not their fault. And I guarantee those kids are embarrassed and just as frustrated as you are. So, those are kids that you might want to pull us aside and be like, hey, we have this going on. It's the second morning. Can you talk to them? And we would be happy to do that because that's a tough thing for them too. The last sort of behavior that we see is the overachieving campers. I see that one all the time. They're so used to pressure in their lives and being really mature and being there for their families that they do a lot of that towards others. So if you have a camper who's parenting others, you kind of see that sometimes. Or if you think that they're trying to please you and acting really mature, that might be just overachieving behavior. So in the interest of getting us out of here, these are just some different ways to solve some of these issues. So if you can, with campers that have inwardly directed behavior, if you can give them little challenges and help them succeed, it can take away some of their stress because they can be more confident. They can know that they can accomplish something. the idea of self-esteem is beautiful and it's like pop culture and whatever, but what they really teach mental health professionals is not self-esteem, it's self-efficacy. If you believe that you can do something, you won't be afraid of failing. If you believe that you can do something, you can believe in yourself. So it's all about your ability to accomplish things. And you can it says gently draw the child out by challenging them. Even challenging them to little things where you know they can succeed, that's very helpful with the inward behavior. For outward behavior, directing them towards safety, very key. Finding us, that's great. Helping them find ways to express big feelings. Something that I did with a couple of campers with really big feelings last summer, I had a ball in my bag and I would just have them smash it on the ground. That's not going to hurt anybody, it's not going to hurt anything, and they feel so much better when they get it out. And eventually they're not angry anymore and they can come safely back to you guys and the rest of the kids. Engaging those kids a lot in sort of safer activities that they can get a lot of energy out can be really helpful. And then with the last category, your sort of parentified kids, encouraging them to let loose and be silly can be really helpful. Reminding them it's okay to be a kid and Kesem is the right environment for that. They're going to have to go home and they're going to be stuck in their role. They're going to be taking care of somebody. And so if you can let them know, even in overt ways, hey, this is the place. Chill out. Relax. We're all being silly here. And you guys do such a great job of that, just like letting go around the campers and just being silly and not being afraid to, show who you are and have some fun. Because that's what those campers need. So, I don't know how to make this go away. It's cool. Yeah. All right. So that will be another thing that hopefully they'll be able to send this out to you, because I know those are some really specific ideas which can be really helpful. The last task is growth. These campers just want to be normal, right? And camp is one way that they can do that. They can be supported, they can be around other kids who have been through really similar things, and they don't have to explain themselves, which for most of the kids I talk to is really the beauty of camp. So I want to ask you guys to think about the activities that you do at camp and what helps the kids feel normal at camp. That's kind of the question. So back in your groups, to discuss for just a minute or two, what helps the kids feel normal? What helps them grow?
I think the best cabin chef I ever had, I've always worked with Olympians, but the best cabin chef I ever had were people to talk to. Like, it's where they were just really like one another, where they all there. Like, I remember like really specifically in camp, where like they all just talk about bullshit. Like, it's like, I wanted to see how people actually want to talk to me, and that's a pretty awesome person, because my parents answer that
There was a group of like 4 siblings where one of them acted out and the others were like, maybe 2 of them acted out. There were twins, a boy and a girl, and they acted out like crazy. And the 2 other kids, I didn't even know they were their siblings, did not act out. It was like 2 kids. I know I'll remember them when I like see the names of them. Yes.
I think camp also really great. Like, I feel like everyone here is the best person they are. Like at least I feel that way. Like, I feel like I'm a lot better of a person at camp than I am here, because I feel like you have to always remember that they're watching you, and it's like someone will look up to you. And you have to be that role model. Especially at camp, I think it's a great opportunity.
It's so tough because you're there.
It's hard to really good care of your children.
Like, the job taking care.
Okay, after church. I'm sorry, do you remember that?
I wasn't there.
Carrie was there.
It was the year before. I think.
I
think I showed up afterwards.
It was on.
are the things that we do at camp that help kids grow and feel normal? What do you got? What do you guys come up with? I honestly am not sure there's a wrong answer because I feel like everything that you guys do all week long when they're at camp is helpful for them and like promotes growth. So what do you guys talk about? Go ahead.
I mean, we kind of talked about how, like, at camp, kind of be the best person you can be while you're there, because a lot of kids, they're gonna be watching all the time. They're gonna be looking at how you interact with other people, how you interact with them, like them, how you interact with the campers, and like that really shows that, like, no matter what, some of these campers will end up like looking up to you. So it's important to always like be the best person you can be, just like at least for their sake, you know.
Thank you. That's great because you guys are models for them while they're there, right? And you're modeling normalcy, you're modeling growth, you're modeling good connections with others and all these amazing things, good behavior. And to be honest, some of these kids don't have that at home, cancer or not. I work with a whole lot of kids whose family has not been touched in any way by illness, and they do not have good models. So for 1 week, these kids are going to see you guys and be like, man, that's what an adult should be. That's what I want to do when I grow up. These campers do love you. They each camper, I would say, do you have a counselor or a unit leader that you really like? All of them had somebody that they picked out that was their favorite. What do you guys talk about? What helps the campers grow and feel normal?
We were like you said, all the little things we do, like games, being soft, and being ultimately so that they yeah, cabin chat and stuff. We'll talk to cabin chat and a lot of people are
Yeah. Some of these kids have literally never been asked, how do you feel? How do you feel about this? What do you think about this? Sometimes never. All of those are great examples. What did you guys talk about? Ways that CASM encourages growth and normalcy.
I just want to make sure.
You're the spokesman, sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, we talked about basically the same thing, like cabin chats and having a good relationship with the counselors, because it's more of like a friendship. And then we also kind of touched on the empowerment ceremony, just because that's kind of a reminder that what everyone has in common, so that they're not alone. It's just absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, knowing that they're not alone creates this amazing sense of normalcy, right? At their schools, they might literally be the only kid who's experienced something like this. I have one student who I'm pushing to come to camp. He's a 5th grader, and his school has about 750 kids, and he is the only one who has lost a parent, which to me is hard to believe because I see a lot of it, but it's not normal for him at school. He's kind of singled out. And so at CASM, I really want him to come because he would feel normal. He'd know he's not alone and that it's hard for everybody who experiences it, right? These kids can make friends they have something in common with. They get to try new things while they're at camp. Some of these kids definitely, like, they grew up in the city and they've never gone canoeing or whatever, right? Sometimes for the first time they get to try things out. Does anybody remember football? Football was awesome. And the first day and a half he was at camp, he isolated himself, he didn't want to talk to anybody. And Care Bear and I tag teamed him and we were like, hey buddy, why don't you just try to go down the slide? And finally he went down it and that boom, we could see it as he was halfway down. We could see him laughing and smiling and he got it, right? And he was a star camper for the rest of the week. He was amazing. So trying something new, showing some initiative, doing something that you're not very good at and finding some success, connecting with people. Yeah, they all have something in common, but these kids have to learn to work through differences too sometimes. but you guys do a great job of really promoting growth in these kids and making sure that there's some normalcy. And I know I appreciate that. So I want to remind you guys of the most important thing for today. Just be supportive. That's the mission of KESM, right? To support a child. That's it. And you guys talked today about so many amazing ways to do that, including like little things like the techniques getting on their level, right? You just have to be there for them and listen. This is going to sound like a crazy thing, but there is almost no explanation. There's been a ton of scientific research on why counseling works, and there's not really research that shows anything other than that it's the relationship between two people. That's the thing that works the most. And I don't think you need to be a professional counselor to do that. I think that you guys connect with these kids in a very real way. And that is the thing that makes the most difference. So being there, listening, if you need the MHP, letting us be there to listen and to take it off your plate for a minute sometimes with those outwardly acting campers. Do you guys have any questions or concerns or anything like that? Okay, I'm around if you do. I think the advisory board is done meeting for the year, but I work right down the street and I would be so happy to come back or to answer email questions at any time. If you guys, the next time you get together and meet, decide that you have some questions, write them down. Somebody can email them to me and I will send you detailed, lengthy responses because I like to write. What do you say?
I was just gonna say, like, make sure that if you're having issues with the camper or like, you're overwhelmed, reach out to like the people on admin or the MHPs or camp advisors, because like that's kind of what we do. And like if we are too overwhelmed, like I'll bring it up to someone else. But like don't think that you have to do it all yourself. Like, there's a reason that there's like people there who aren't just being counselors for kids.
Absolutely. And we are going to push that self-care this summer. I think we're going to create some things for you guys, because to me, that's a really important part of the job, is that you guys deserve a break. You guys deserve a little bit of self-care, and that's what gets you through the week sometimes, because honestly, even those inwardly acting, the isolating campers, and it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of work, right? How many of you in here are parents? Okay, so nobody has signed on for that yet, right? You're going to be in a way for 7 days because you are around the clock with these campers. And honestly, parents start with infants and they learn when kids are little that they need time to take a break, and they learn how to handle that and get their own time and whatever. And you guys are just being thrown in. Some of you with teenagers, which is kind of the worst. You're just being thrown in, right, and expected to be like amazing kind of parent figures around the clock for 7 straight days. It's too much. So we, as the MHPs, are really going to push taking care of yourselves this summer, and we're going to bring some things for you to be able to take a break and take like a breather, and hopefully that will be helpful this summer. But I just want you to know that when it comes to this topic of grief and loss and how we should be responding, the most important thing you can do is just help these campers create that safe environment and create some memories where they're safe and they're happy, because I did not see too many unhappy campers at KESM last year. All right, no other questions or concerns or anything? Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And if you can send them that showing feelings through the great. That's good. I think that would be.
Hey guys, we have a training this Wednesday, and it won't be that long. No, it starts at 8. But we'll send you guys an email.
Hopefully it'll be more fun than sad stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.